Hey guys, welcome to episode 3 of All Gen Gamers. I'm Johnny. My YouTube show is Happy Console Gamer on YouTube, and I'm joined by John, also known as Gamester81 on YouTube, and Pete, also known as Pete Door on YouTube as well.
Hey guys, I got my new mic. I hope you guys can tell the difference. Well, maybe you won't be able to, but my audio's lower. And I got that new snowball mic, so these two should have it soon, but I got the new mic. I'm excited.
Nice, and we're joined with our special guest this week, Ed, also known as SplatterTrigger on YouTube. Welcome, Ed.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. Pleasure to be
Ed,
here.
why don't you kind of talk about your channel real quick, Ed, just kind of briefly about your YouTube channel.
It's just basically a collecting channel right now and slowly getting into reviews. And that's basically about it for now.
Yeah, and I love your channel. Your channel is awesome. It's really meant for more of a hardcore gamer audience out there. So yeah, just because you cover a lot of working design stuff, and that's an old fantastic company that we're going to definitely talk about today with you. It's going to be great. It's actually funny. Like the thing is, I'm a huge working designs fan, and I thought I was a hardcore collector of working designs. I thought it was pretty good until I started talking to you on YouTube and seeing your collection, and I was like, wow, I'm out of my league. I don't know anything about collecting here. It's crazy.
Before we get too far into it, how about we have Ed kind of introduce what working designs actually is. So, Ed, if you were talking to somebody that knows no idea what working designs is, like the whole idea behind this publisher, why don't you go ahead and just tell people what it is, basically?
Well, Working Designs was an American video game publishing company that ran from, I think, 1989 to 2005. And they specialized in bringing over a lot of import Japanese niche games, especially in the RPG and the shooter and strategy genres. What many people don't know, though, is if you'd like, do you mind if I give like a brief history of it?
Yeah, go ahead. Whatever you want to talk about.
Working Designs originally started as a computer accounting software company in 1986, and the founder ended up unexpectedly passing away. And he was finishing the program in code, and his recommendation was a man named Victor Ireland. And Victor Ireland was hired to take over, and after the software was complete, he struck a deal with the woman named Sylvia Schmidt, I believe her last name was, and she was basically like the financial backer of the company. And he had been a writer for a couple of video game magazines back in the day, and he was also a translator for a couple of TurboGrafx games, like Dungeon Explorer 2. He was the head translator on, I believe. And he convinced her, and they started off with Kadash for the TurboGrafx 16, which was a Taito arcade. Was it like 4 characters or something? I can't remember off the top of my head right now. You guys remember that?
Oh yeah, great
Kadash?
Kadash, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was a side view game. It was action RPG, and you could actually link 2 cabinets together to play that. I'm a huge fan of that old arcade game. They created Kadash, and then they did the translation for Kadash, and then what did they do after that? Was that the first game that they did?
That was the first game they brought over. After that, though, I don't know the chronological order off the top of my head, basically, but they ended up coming out with Parasol Stars, also for the TurboGrafx 16, right, which was
Taito. Yeah.
Taito as well. That was Bubble Bobble 3, if anybody knows. It was kind of like a one-screen. What's the best way to explain it? Like it's just jumping and throwing like fruit at enemies, and once you kill all the enemies on stage, you move to the next screen. Each level was basically just like a screen, kind of like I would think akin to like the original Donkey Kong. And then they went on to the Turbo CD with Bastille, Cosmic Fantasy 2, Exile, and Exile 2 Wicked Phenomena, which all were RPGs.
Yeah. And isn't it funny when you think back, is that they went and translated those games, but on basically a platform that was dying, which is really unfortunate for Working Designs at that point.
Ireland took it to that point because that was at the time that was the best format. He wanted to go into the CD format, and he was going with technology wise, and he didn't want to. I think what it was the cost of the carts at the time for like Nintendo and Sega were too much. So he decided to go with the CD-ROM format. And then after, TurboGrafx died, he moved on to the Sega CD, which he brought over. What Working Designs became most popular for was Lunar, and then continued on with Lunar 2, and which obviously are both JRPGs, and at the time they were very groundbreaking titles. And I just wanted to make clear that Working Designs was a publisher, not a developer. They just ported over the Japanese games.
Yeah. So probably one of the most famous series that they published was Lunar, correct? Can you kind of elaborate on some of that series in general and kind of why it's so successful here?
Lunar came at a time when the JRPG theme wasn't so popular in the States. And, at the time it was just like you had just your Final Fantasy and whatever Square put out at the time. But it came out, it became an instant cult classic. Went on to spawn a sequel that Working Designs also localized over here. And then continuing on with the Sega CD titles, they went on with Vey and Pop Full Mail.
They brought out a lot of games, right? So it's hard to keep track of them a lot of times.
Yeah, off the top of my head here, there was only 4 in the Sega. Those were the only 4 in the Sega CD. Then they went on to the Sega Saturn, and they started branching out with their Spaz label, which I believe it was Sega Ages, which was a collection of updated and classic Sega titles that was brought out in the Sega Saturn in Japan, and they did a kind of like a collection piece that they put out here.
Did they really bring over Sega Ages? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were the ones who brought it over, but they brought it under their Spaz label. They started branching off they created a new label to basically start focusing on like the shooter genre and platforming, and which would later on be carried onto the PS1.
Yeah.
But their Saturn titles, that's when they first started hitting, they became known for it became the beginning of the end, I'll say, because that's when their extensive delays on putting out their games came, like Magic Knight Ray Earth was delayed for like almost 3 years, and it was actually
I remember that. It came out like right at the end of the Saturn too, right?
I think that was the last U.S. released Saturn game. I think.
Really?
Yes, it was. And
Magic Knight Ray Earth, just for those that don't know, it's based on an anime series, right? And the game that they ported over was like an action RPG kind of game?
Yeah, something along those lines. Yeah, it's been a while since I played it, but yes.
So I remember Rob Man picked that up when it first came out, and the only problem with the game, it was really short. You could finish it in a couple of hours. It was a really quick game you could get through.
Is it pretty hard to find?
Oh, it goes most of Working Designs titles, but yes, Magic Knight Ray Earth is hard to find. It's also, if you can find it on eBay, but like most of Working Designs titles, they go for a pretty penny nowadays.
Is that because they're really highly thought out? I mean, people like to search for them, or is that because they didn't make very many, or both?
It's a bit of both. Working Designs, a lot of their titles they pressed to make them rare. Like they created their product to be a collector's item. Like when they moved on to the PS1 era, when they put out the Lunar Completes. The box sets with the Omake boxes inside, the figurines, the maps and such, the soundtracks, the making of the CDs. But that was, like I said, with Magic Knight Ray Earth, with the Saturn era, that was the beginning of the end for them because they had issues. Victor Island tried going over the PS1 at the time, and I forget the guy's name, but he butted heads with them. Sony was very against putting out 2D RPGs at the time. And the guy that was, I think it was a CEO for North America, Sony, he was fired and they hired him at Sega. So he then jumped ship and started porting his titles to the PS1. And that's where like these big, the Lunar collectibles, the box sets started coming out, and like Alundra had their map and stuff. They made their games specifically for collectors in a time when that wasn't the norm here in North America.
And just to touch on the collectors part, it's interesting because all their games, like you're talking about, especially on the PS1, they all have this really, really unique look to them in terms of the design. Like they use like what do they call it? Like embossed lettering on the titles of the games, and they always had like shiny covers, and they really like to include like little trinkets along with their games as well. And leading into that, what we haven't touched on it yet, but don't you have a complete working designs collection of every published title? Have you achieved that yet?
Yes, I have every title that they did publish, but it's interesting you brought it up because it goes into another topic about their games. I have the physical games themselves complete, but what I don't have, and it's a whole other beast, is a lot of their games that they put out. I'll touch upon. It'll be like Lunar, the Silver Star for the Sega CD. They put variant disc art games like Alundra and Thunder Force 5, which were on the PS1. They put in different back inserts, also disc art, not to mention, stickers and whatnot within their games that just varied. So, like, if you want a totally complete collection, some of these things are extremely hard to find, and it does get expensive. But the bare bones, yes, I do have every published title they put out, just not the variant art.
And what like draws you to collecting the complete working designs collection? Is it because of the way that the games look? Is it because you really enjoy all the titles that they release? And I'm sure there's some duds out there that you don't really enjoy. What drew you into this really, really awesome accomplishment, by the way? That's no easy task, especially getting each one complete. What drew you to pursue a full working designs collection?
Well, when I was younger, I really appreciated how that this was the only company. Now it's the norm, but at the time it was the only company that was really bringing over these box sets, and in Japan it was the norm. And just getting something with all these extra little special things added in, it being a collector already, even at that young age, it still was. I wanted to hold on to what I could, and then when I got older, I just got nostalgic about it, and I just the beast woke up, I guess, and I just had to go get every one.
I have a question for you, Ed. How many games were published in total from Working Design? And which ones do you particularly like? What kind of stand out to you?
Well, the ones that besides excluding Lunar's, Alundra was also one of my favorite titles that they brought out. As for the complete library, is it 29 altogether?
Wikipedia's got a list here. For the TurboGrafx, there was Kadash, Cosmic Fantasy 2, Exile, Wicked, Phenomenon, Parasol Stars, Bastille. Sega CD had Lunar, the Silver Star, Lunar Eternal Blue, Popful Mail, Vey. Sega Saturn had Albert Odyssey, Legend of Eldine, Dragon Force, Iron Storm, Magic Knight Ray-Earth, Sega Ages, Shining Wisdom, and PlayStation had Alundra, Arc the Lad Collection, Elemental Gearbolt, which actually, you know what I'm talking about with Elemental Gearbolt. There's a crazy collector's edition out there for that. We'll get on that actually right after this. And Lunar Silver Star Story Complete, Lunar 2, Eternal Blue Complete, Ray Storm, Ray Crisis, Silhouette Mirage, Thunder Force 5, Vanguard Bandits, Growlancer Generations, this is on PS2 now, Growlancer Generations, Gun Griffin Blaze, and Sylphid, The Lost Planet. Now, talking about crazy collector's editions out there from Working Designs, why don't you tell us real quick about this collector's edition that they put out for Elemental Gearbolt?
Well, it wasn't so much that it was a collector's edition. It was what they did for E3 1998. The Working Designs crew, when they went to do their their table or whatever, their little cubicle or whatever, they all dressed up like characters in black suits with black sunglasses, like think of Men in Black, and they walked into E3 and they had these cases that they were basically called the Elemental Gearbolt Assassin case, and there was about 50 of them produced that they gave away as a promotion. A couple of the employees kept some. And there was a contest later on, which I'll touch on, that they gave one away to as well. Now, what these cases were is inside the case, the cover of the case, it was like an aluminum steel case with like a fake lock on it. And after you opened it up, on the case itself, it had the emblem to the Japanese logo for Elemental Gearbolt. And then when you opened it up, they had a gun con, memory card, and the game itself. Now, what happened was that this set is very rare and it goes for thousands of dollars on eBay and whatnot. But there's actually a rarer version of it where the gun con and the memory card were embossed with I think it was I want to say 24 karat like gold foil, like a paint. You know what I'm saying? Like a spray 20 and. I know the employees had some, and then there was only about 12 or 15 that they gave out before the cost got too high to keep producing them, and then the rest just had I think a red gun con and a red memory card. But the last one that I know actually sold of was sold by a ex Working Designs employee, and she had the set, and she offered to have Victor Island himself sign it, and it sold for exactly $3,000.
Wow.
That's awesome. That's a cool set. I did hear about them, but hearing in detail about that was really cool. I didn't know there was variants of that set. That's crazy.
Well, the gold ones tend to go for a lot. Like the ones without the gold, I think one sold for just prior to that. I mean, this was all like a year ago. Within 6 months, 3 sets sold, and one of them, the cheapest one went for like $1,400, and then the next one went for about $2,100. But the $1,400 one didn't have like the gold, the paint on it or whatnot.
It's probably Victor Island selling them, trying to make some money. You know what I mean? That's awesome.
And when it comes to the extreme of it, Ed, do you ever picture yourself attempting to buy one of these and own it, or do you just see that like as no possibility of ever owning one of them?
Oh God, I shouldn't be saying this. I hope my wife doesn't hear this. I did. Okay, I'm probably gonna get a lot of feedback on my YouTube channel here, but the gold one that I guess I could use her name, Kelly Knight, who was the Working Designs employee, sold. I was outbidded by $1 in the last minute of the auction.
Man. Ed, I did not know that.
Sorry, what's the final price on that then? So you were outbid by $1. What was the final price?
$3,000.
Oh.
So yeah, that definitely, you are a hardcore Working Designs collector for sure. I mean, to bid $500 on a game takes a lot of dedication, but $3,000, wow.
That was the most expensive thing I ever went after, and it just was, I think it was last October, so it was like I'm looking at it like, well, my Christmas bonus could go towards that or something. You know what I mean? Something along those lines. That was like my mentality, and it's like, it's probably a good thing that didn't happen because. Okay,
that brings me into a really cool question. What's the most expensive Working Designs game that you've bought then? Like, to complete your collection, what was the most expensive? This is going to be great.
Because you already know the answer to this.
I don't know if I do, actually.
You're the only one, and I don't know if you. Yeah, it was Bastille for TurboGrafx, the Turbo CD, excuse me, and it was a complete copy of Bastille. And what Bastille was is it's like a RPG strategy, like a sci-fi game. And to have a complete copy of that game, it comes with a map, but that and Exile 2 Wicked Phenomena had this like paper cardboard deal that wrapped around the CD case. And most of those got thrown away because there was a cutout to cut out and mail out for, I think, a poster or something, I can't remember, or to join like Working Designs fan club. And I looked forever for this thing. And I'm going to say, and it is the most expensive game I ever paid for. And I ended up getting it, I think, for about $256 I think I paid for it.
Nice.
And about 6 months later, another Working Designs collector I'm in contact with actually found the same complete deal and got it for $75.
Oh. You know what though? That's the way it goes. 1 week something's really expensive, the next week it drops. You never know.
Yeah, that's how using say eBay as a site, the prices fluctuate. Like, one day you can get a game, a good deal on a game, and then the next day it could be $100 over, $100 under.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it depends on the time of year, obviously, absolutely. I've seen games going for like a couple $100, as you're saying, and then drop down to like $35. I've seen at times. So it's just a case of just hanging on to eBay, and if you really want a game though, you're gonna buy it, right? You might not see it again. Yeah,
to a degree. I've got, excluding Working Designs, I kind of tame myself. Other words, it's, there's only so much of a budget I have to do. I'm sure we all do, because
sure.
But a perfect example of this is one game I've been looking for is Super Star Soldier for TurboGrafx 16, and it's a shooter in the Star Soldier franchise. And I was actually outbidded on one like a year ago. I think it ended up going for like $140 or something with the cardboard box and like, the little TurboGrafx inserts. There was actually like a week ago, somebody had one in an eBay store with a buy it now or best offer, and it was a buy it now of like $55.
Wow.
Was that with the box?
Yeah.
Oh, geez, that's a good deal.
I was actually watching that sale, and he started off at 80 and just kept coming down. I mean, I didn't have it in my budget to grab it at the time, but it was, whoever ended, if it's not up there still, if somebody got that was a pretty good deal.
I mean, have you ever had any like extraordinary, like really lucky finds on anything from Working Designs? Like, did you get a complete game for like $20 that normally goes for $100, or did you basically have to pay around market value for most of your games?
The best deal I ever got with paying, obviously paying, and was actually the complete copy of Kadash. That I did not see with a box for about a year and a half, and that was TurboGrafx 16 game as well. And I was the case with the Hugh Carden case would go for like $80-$90 all the time, and I actually think. John, I actually contacted you once.
I do remember that. Yeah, I remember that. And
what the irony, I guess, of life was I went through a move in the fall, and I was without internet connection for about 2 months, and that's a whole nother story. But when I finally got my internet connection back, and I went online, the first thing I did was go to eBay and start typing in Working Designs titles, and Kadash popped up, and it was through an eBay store, seller store, complete. And the guy wanted, I think he wanted like $59 for it, but he had a best offer. So I shot him a best offer, and he haggled back and forth, and I ended up getting, with shipping, I paid, I think like $43 totally for it.
Wow. Fantastic deal.
Yeah, with a box, that's like, cause I picked up Kadash as well. I think I got mine for about $30, but no box. But I for myself, I can live without the box, but actually that's a pretty good deal with a box.
Yeah, the game itself sells for loose like about $30. I think is probably average.
Yeah, that's the problem with eBay prices. Like when I was looking at a loose copy of Kadash with just a case, like I said, they were going for like $80 around there.
Wow.
I mean,
it's been the time of year. Yeah, I just want to say that I'm such a big fan of Kadash myself. I actually wanted to buy the arcade board. I was actually checking that out quite a few times, but and I think the arcade board goes for about $100. And I know Luke Morris, who was on the last episode, he has the arcade board of that as well. So something else to look out for as well.
I remember watching that video that he put out. I was very jealous of that.
Me too. Me too.
Who made the arcade for Kadash?
Taito, right?
Taito? Was it Taito as well? So it seemed like they really poured a lot of Taito ports to various consoles. So they must have had a close relationship with Taito.
They had a close relationship with Taito and Game Arts, because the other Taito titles they brought over were Ray Crisis and Ray Storm on the PS1 under their Spaz label. And both those games, if anybody hasn't heard about them, they're shooters, or if you want to call them shmups.
We had a bit of a debate the last time about the term shmup. When did you start using that term shmup, out of curiosity?
You know what? I heard the last episode, and yeah, for me, it was also when I came onto YouTube. I never heard it, and it was funny because I put up a video or something, and people and I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. I was like, what is this? I think I actually had to Google it, and then I realized it was like, oh, it's a condensation of shoot 'em ups. I don't know. I guess it's just lingo that in my old age I just don't care for.
And the something that I wanted to bring up before when we were talking about the prices of games and everything, and a lot of people will probably listen to the show and they're like, "What? You're crazy? You were going to pay $3,000 for a game, or you paid $300 for a game?" Just don't forget that it's not just, at least for me, and I think it's the same for Johnny because I was talking to you about this before. It's more of the emotional attachment to it, and if it makes you happy, the price doesn't matter as much. Sure, I've paid like $120, which was a good deal for Panzer Dragoon Saga. But I enjoyed that game so much, and just having that game in my collection just makes me happy. Same thing with Earthbound. And another good way to look at it, and not a lot of people look at it this way, if you're going to go and buy, say, a rare game and it costs $150, just think of every time that you go into like a Best Buy or a GameStop for a new release, and you buy a brand new game that's $50, and you beat it, and you're not the type of person that trades in games, this probably wouldn't apply to people that trade in games. But if you keep all the games that you buy, just think if you held back on buying 3 new release games, and you took that money and you put it towards getting one amazing game that costs quite a bit more money on, say, eBay. That's the way I look at it when I buy an expensive game. Will this game equal be equal in value in terms of enjoyment as 3 new releases that I might not play as much? So that's a good way to look at it. And when it comes to you guys, I guess we'll start with Johnny. Like when it comes to spending a lot of money on a single game, like how do you look at that? Do you look at it as, just do you have emotional attachment? Yeah, go ahead.
Exactly what you hit on. We were talking about it. Something like one of my friends, I'll use him as an example, spent $300 on a boxed Earthbound, and he's a big fan of that game growing up. He used to rent it all the time, but he never owned it. So for him to buy it was like buying his childhood. And same for me. If there's something that I'm missing from my game collection, I don't mind spending the money because, as you said, when it's you by yourself looking at your collection, it's not a bragging rights thing. It's nothing. Nobody collects for that. Who am I going to brag to, Rob Man? Hey, Rob Man, are you impressed? It's not about that. It's. I look up and I'm like, oh man, I remember this game, or this game meant something to me this day, or I remember when I bought that. So definitely an emotional connection for me. What about you, Gamester? Like, what's it like for you as well?
Just the same thing. Just a lot of nostalgic reasons, and when I buy a game, I have to save up for it. And I obviously don't buy a game to look to sell it to make more money or anything like that. I do it just for the same reason you guys do, for playing it, enjoying it, and definitely I feel like I get my money's worth out of it because I know I'm paying that much money. If I am paying a game for $200, I'm ready for that. And I expect that. So
I was gonna say, even with you, Gamester, because you buy a lot of game systems, much more than anybody that I know. Like, say, because there's a lot of game systems that I'm sure you buy, and the games are like impossible to get a hold of. So you end up with just the system. Yeah. So, and some of those systems can get really, really expensive. So, before you make your purchase, is it based on just collecting purposes, or do you I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, do you have a reason why you would want to spend, say, like a couple $100 on a really rare system? Is it because when you look at all these systems in your room, it just makes you, what do you feel when you look at your systems, knowing that you may not ever be able to play some of them?
Well, it's kind of like, it's a hobby, just like people like music is a hobby to some people, or going on a walk is some hobby. It's a hobby.
Exactly.
And obviously I play my systems as well, and I'd say all my systems I do have games for. There might be one or two that I don't like. I'll give you an example, like the Apple Pippin.
I was going to say, rare. Yeah, the games are like rarer than the systems themselves, and when they do show up, they're expensive.
But interesting enough, the Pippin though, I paid I want to say I paid $200 for it, but the guy, I actually got it to work. The guy sold it to me, and he basically sold it to me and it didn't work, and I actually fixed it, so it got to work. So that's cool. But I need to get some Pippin games for sure.
And just explain to the listeners what exactly is the Pippin, because for those that don't know, it's pretty interesting as to what this system really.
Yeah, it came out in 1995, and it's Bandai. And it was kind of a joint venture between Bandai and Apple. A lot of people, didn't realize that Apple got into the console market, the video game market, and they did. And the Pippin was released as the Atmark in Japan, and as the Outworld in here in the States. And the difference really besides the names is that the one in the States, the Atmark, or the Outworld, I'm sorry, is black, and the one in Japan is white. So it did a little bit more better in Japan, and didn't do very well here in the States at all, because mainly it's like a Macintosh ported to a console. So most of the games are educational games for it, and what they call edutainment games. And there weren't very many good platformers or anything like that, so to speak.
And also, what's pretty interesting is, I don't know the specific details on this, so I could be wrong on some of it, but there was a first-person shooter that was on the Pippin called Marathon, and most people will know this more recently as it was ported over to the Xbox Live Arcade, which is a first-person shooter. It's like a really, really fast-paced Doom kind of Quake kind of game, but it was developed by Bungie, which everybody knows now for the Halo series, but Bungie made a first-person shooter, and it was actually on the Pippin, as well as the Mac. But I'm not too familiar with, what else besides it was on the Pippin. But that's just pretty interesting. And you can play this game now on the Xbox Live Arcade, and that's how I first played it as well. But that was on the Pippin. I've never seen it on eBay. It's probably like super rare. But besides that, yeah, the Pippin. If just to bring this up for all the kids out there that are like, oh, I'm gonna go buy a Pippin now. This thing is like purely for collector reasons only. It's very, very cool to have. It's a cool conversation piece for sure. But because there was a point where I was really interested in getting a Pippin, and I told myself I'm not gonna buy one until I can get games for it. And I'll tell you, I searched for a good couple of months, and games never show up for that thing on eBay. And when they do, you know, they're in the $80 to $100 price range sometimes. So definitely don't go getting the Pippin unless, you know, you just want to have it as a conversation piece or spend a lot of money on games.
Keep in mind that the Pippin really came out at a really bad time because it was competing with the PlayStation 1, which had the majority of the market. You had Nintendo 64 hitting the market as well soon after. So there was a plethora of systems already out in the market when by the time Pippin hit. And I think it'd be cool, personally, if Apple maybe got into the more console. I know you can play apps on the phone, and that's kind of there's a debate about whether that's a system or not, but it'd be kind of interesting if they did get into the home console market again. What are you guys' thoughts about that?
Oh, that's a pretty big subject because I know a lot of people always want us to talk about what we think of the the iPhone and everything.
We talked about we'll do that another time.
Definitely.
Sure.
But sounds like someone's got a train going through their house right now. But actually, getting back to
some Harley Davidson guys going up my road.
Ed, so what was your mindset, Ed, when it came to putting that $2,999 bid on that Elemental Gearbolt game? Like, was it what were you thinking when you put that in? Were you kind of regretting that you put that bid in, or were you kind of happy when you didn't win it? Like, what were you thinking?
I was actually on the fence because I want, like as any collector that's trying to complete something or needs a rarity to whatever they're collecting for, whether it be like, video games or a specific company and whatnot in the video game industry. I really wanted that. And like, I like to call it like my white whale. And it did, I was kind of torn because at one point it's a lot of money but it's not like, obviously if that was to happen and my video game monthly budget would be inactive for quite some time after that. And that's generally the thing is how I look at it with the hobby is, as long as you stay within your means, you're fine. And though that was within my means, it may have pushed me back towards like a new games every month for like, a couple months or whatever it may have been. In a way, yes, it was nice not to spend $3,000 or whatever in one shot. But on the other end, it's like, well, I missed out by $1. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that would bother me for quite some time for sure. I know I put bids in on a lot of things, and I put in a bid for so much money, and at the end, sometimes I'm kind of relieved that I didn't win it. But then again, I look back and I'm like, damn, I could have had that game.
I know that feeling. I know that feeling totally. Like where you like, okay, I remember I spent $150 back in in 2000. On Dragon Warrior 2, mint and box.
Wow.
And, yeah, but you know what? I wanted the complete collection because I had all the rest the same way. So, but yeah, no. But there's been some things I've bid on after that. I was like, oh man, I'm like in the $300 range. I'm glad when I don't win. I'm like, okay, forget it. Like let's regroup and rethink this here.
Yeah. And I will add this. I will add this real quick. Like now that I'm married, it's changed quite a bit.
Yes.
I think that I know Ed, you probably can relate to that as well. But it's definitely she's definitely been supportive and stuff of my hobby. But it's definitely in perspective as well.
Yeah.
So
it definitely is for sure. You gotta watch yourself a little bit more is the best way to put it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So okay, I guess we can go into this direction. What happened to Working Designs, Ed? What was their, in the end of the day, I don't want to say they weren't successful because they were very successful. They put out a lot of great games, translated a lot of great games, but, did they make a bad financial decision? Is that why they're no longer around? There's a lot of stuff why they're no longer here.
I don't know exactly. Like, there's various reasons that, I've read about and heard about and whatnot. And basically, it started off like I said before in the Sega Saturn era with the delays of their games. Victor Ireland butting heads when he tried to go to port over his games over to Sony, put them on the PS1. And I forget the gentleman's name, but he was fired from Sony. He went to work for Sega. So as soon as that happened, Victor Ireland took Working Designs and was able to free himself up to Sony. And he decided not to support the Sega Dreamcast because this guy was now working for Sega. And the delays continued, and he had problems allegedly with Sony then because they wanted to, he couldn't put out one game at a time like the Arc the Lad collection, and then later on for the PlayStation 2 Groundlancer generations. That Sony, in a way, forced him to put, a set together, 2 or 3 games. And he also had premium packaging for these games because just think of it this way. Was it 99 or 2000 when the Lunars came out on the PS1? At that,
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, it was 99 for sure.
It was 99. Those games back then, they were going for $60 a pop, brand new, and the values held up over time. But it just, it continued with their delays, and then finally in 2005 they were working on to release Goemon for the PlayStation 2, and they just, I guess, shut the doors. He was losing money by not being able to put out one game at a time, and it just kind of was like a house of cards and just fell.
It's funny, Working Designs got a lot of criticisms in their times as well. I think they came in and did a lot of amazing things. They started releasing anime RPGs that weren't getting brought over here, so they were filling that niche, which was fantastic. But I think they got criticized a lot because of their translations. They sometimes had a little bit too much fun with their translations. And I think a lot of purists were kind of pissed off about that. But I was always a big fan of them, and I was sad to see them go. I really was. I thought it was an end of an era. And but yeah, I guess the market had changed because all of a sudden the PlayStation and all this, the Sony, I should say, was starting to realize that, hey, RPGs are selling. Let's port them ourselves. Why are we going third party with this company when we can just do it ourselves and get all the money, type of thing. So I think the market really changed on those guys big time.
Well, that was one of the things with Sony. They actually cut in at I think during the PS1 era, they started gobbling up all, even though they were saying 2D was dead, they really were gobbling up all the rights to publish the JRPGs basically of that era, and then so on forth with the PS2.
Yeah, I know. Lunar is actually still around. They're still making games. Like I saw one for the PSP recently. And who's publishing those now? Now that Working Designs is gone.
XC just published one for the PSP in the States, and that's like just in the States, that's probably the 6th remake, I would think, 5th or 6th remake. And it's funny because a lot of, true little criticism over here saying, oh, they're remaking Lunar again. And out in Japan, they've remade that game, so many times as opposed to really, the releases we've seen in North America.
So Ed, what is, like, if someone wants to get into, buying some Working Designs games and they don't know where to start, why don't you share with us, like, some of your personal favorites, say, like, your personal favorite RPG or two from Working Designs and your personal favorite shoot 'em up from Working Designs, and, maybe one of the other titles that isn't within one of those genres. Do you have any personal favorites and any, like, personal duds that you actually hated and would say to avoid?
Right off the bat, I'll go with the dud. And personally, it's just not my type of game. It's Gungriff and Blaze for the PlayStation 2. You can find that in a bargain bin for like $3 at like eBay or GameStop. But it's just a mech fighter. It's just not my type of game. And as for favorites, though, it's Lunar, Silver Star, definitely. That RPG will always hold a place in my heart. I mean, it's just so nostalgic to me, and just the storyline. And I don't want to ruin it for people who haven't played the game. But and then another one that pops in mind is Alundra, and obviously for shooters, I would have to go with Race Storm, which actually, if anybody's actually interested. Many people know that Square Enix bought out Taito, and they were able to bring Raystorm, was it to Xbox Live, was it, recently, on the PlayStation Network in HD?
Yeah. And for people that didn't know, Alundra is actually, don't a lot of people compare it to, I have it myself, I played it a long time ago. A lot of people make comparisons to like a Zelda-type game. Would you say that's a fair comparison?
Somewhat. It had its own identity, but... it's been years since I've played it, but I just remember it was very hard.
It's very hard. I hopefully I haven't got this wrong, but isn't Alundra kind of a semi-sequel to Landstalker?
Oh, wow, you're going down that road.
Yeah, you know, I didn't think we were going to. I would have kind of done a little bit of research, but being a big fan of Landstalker that I am, I remember when Alundra was released, I was like, wow. I went to the store. I remember I bought it on my birthday. I bought Alundra the day it came out. I'm like, oh, good, it's going to be like Landstalker. But it was harder. Holy jeez. So
Who was it? Climax or was it
Climax.
Matrix? It was Climax. Matrix. Yeah, Matrix formed off of Climax. That's right.
And what would you say is for everybody that's, I'm sure we're going to convince a lot of people to go out and try out Lunar. What would you say is the definitive or the best version to play? Because there's so many different versions of that game that's out right now. What's your favorite? Actually, Johnny and Ed, what's your favorite version for that game?
Johnny, okay. Okay. My personal favorite version would be the PlayStation 1. And I'm probably going to catch a lot of slack because a lot of people out there like the Sega CD version better. It's just, I think for the time, just at the time that it just grabbed me the way it was. And I really didn't have much hands-on experience when it was released with the original one because I did not actually own a Sega CD until it was basically extinct. And though I did own the original game, I don't know why. Maybe I was a little older. It just struck me, pulled me more in with that remake on the PlayStation 1.
Yeah, like what should I say? It's funny. I get to actually say something I've never actually said before. Is that, and I know a lot of the listeners will cringe when they hear this, but it was Lunar that actually made me sell off a lot of my old collection, and actually because I didn't have a lot of money at the time, and I remember I sold a ton load of games to buy a Sega CDX and Lunar, and I must admit I loved Lunar. I thought it was good, but man, I miss those old games, but I bought most of them back. But I like the original Sega CD version, obviously, but I'm with you, 100% PlayStation 1 version. Now, what did you think of the PSP version, Ed? I know you played a little bit more into it than I certainly did.
Oh, I played that straight through, and I like the visual update. There were some changes in there as well, like with during the battle scenes and whatnot. No, that didn't really bother me. The biggest gripe I have about the game, I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved it, but it was so simple. They really toned down the difficulty where I played through the entire game and I had one party member die once through the entire game, and that was it. There was virtually no challenge to it.
Wow.
Is that because you're used to playing it, or is that because it's just the game itself?
No, the game is Xseed actually toned down the difficulty. I have no idea if Gung Ho is the one who published it in Japan. I don't know if they did that in the Japanese version because I don't own that Japanese version. But anybody I personally think anybody who picked this game up who's never played it before will actually have a very simple time with it.
Yeah. What did you think of? Here's not a debate, but what did you think of number 2, Lunar 2 to number 1? Do you think it lived up to it, or do you think it kind of might have missed it?
I think I missed a little step there. I'm gonna have to say it. I don't get me wrong. I love the game. It's just that I wanted more Lunar to Silver Star. I don't know if that makes any sense to.
No, I know there's this certain magic with the first one, and the second one's kind of going through the motions, and it's good, but it ain't the first one. I'm with you.
No, not at all. It had its own place in my heart. And Lunar 2, I'm not knocking the game at all. I'm not saying it was bad at all. It did not live up to Lunar 1 to me at all.
Now with Lunar 1, when it comes to, I mean, I've played it, but I didn't play it when it was first released, so I don't have that much of an attachment to it as you guys. But I will say that one thing that I really liked about the PS1 version, which is the first version I played, is the characters are really easy to connect to. I absolutely love the way they dealt with them. But for you guys, what really draws you to this game? Is it the story? Is it the characters? Is it the battle system? Is it everything? Is it the music? What really draws you to this game and makes it unique? Besides the point that, when you played it, there weren't that many RPGs like this at the time.
I was going to say that. It really, honestly, when that came out, that was one of the grasping things. There wasn't a lot of, I played Ys, and I was like, oh wow, there's another Sega CD, Sega CD's coming out, and it has an RPG on it, and it was hyped in magazines for a long time. I remember I had cutouts for Lunar. On my wall, I had 7 of them, all cut out of the exact same picture. And I was waiting for this game for like a good year or so. And when I got it, and I thought it was a good RPG. I thought it was good. And in looking back, it's very nostalgic. It's classic. But yeah, I think it was the timing of it. I just think it was the timing of it.
How many hours would it take you to beat Lunar, you think, if from start to finish? How many hours does it take?
About 35, around that ballpark.
Yeah, something in that zone.
And Ed, is it the same thing for you, or did you find anything else in terms of the gameplay of the game that really drew you into it?
In the end, after it's all said and done, that game is, I mean, the battle system's it's very easy to pick up and whatnot, no matter what version you play. It was the story and the music.
Oh, yeah. So this is something else that Ed has that is really amazing. You actually have the soundtrack.
Yeah, that was an interesting find. It's very, I guess it's very hard to find the original Mega CD, which is the Sega CD out in Japan, soundtrack, and I just stumbled across it, and I actually, this is going to lead into something else here. I actually have been I get a lot of import stuff. I got import fever all the time. I love, also collecting for import games, and the seller, this Japanese eBay store or whatever, I've been getting a lot of Lunar, like retro paraphernalia off this store, and it started off with that CD, and I've got a couple other soundtracks that are hard to find, and many people, over in Japan, Lunar was such a craze, and over here, it's more of a nostalgic piece, but over there, I was able to get, there was novels and such manga and put out.
Now, when it comes to soundtracks, that's an area of collecting that I'd love to get into, but honestly, it's pretty hard because, Johnny, I know you have a lot of soundtrack CDs, and the problem is you look on eBay and, there's a lot of counterfeits out there, and you got to really be careful.
Most of it's counterfeits.
Yeah, like, how do you go about doing your research and knowing, like, which are, like, the true legit ones? Because I know myself, I bought a soundtrack for Klonoa Door to Phantomile on the PS1, and when I bought it, I can't remember the exact price, but it was a pretty good price, and I later found out that it was a bootleg, and they do a really, really good job on it. So is there a easy way to tell, like, what are bootlegs, what are official? How do you do it?
I guess do your research, right? Because, like Pete, how did you find out that the one you had was a counterfeit?
I remember just looking at, one day I was looking on eBay and somebody posted the same soundtrack that they were charging a lot more money for, and I'm like, wow, is mine really that rare? But then I looked into it on, it was like a message board or a website or something for Klonoa items, and, somebody said on there that, there's a fake out there for this CD, and they showed kind of what it looked like, and it looked similar to mine, and, I always thought for the longest time mine was the legit thing, and because they did a really good job on it. But yeah, like you said, I guess you just really have to do your research on these things. It's definitely hard to tell from just looking at an auction. I guess the price tells a lot. If it's a soundtrack that is rare and the price is like too good to be true, it's most likely a fake.
It's interesting.
Yeah, like I can give it a little bit of perspective on it. Like basically where I live in Vancouver here, we have a lot of Chinese malls, and we have a lot of counterfeit CDs, soundtrack CDs. And you used to see those years ago. Like I remember going and there'd be walls full of them, but they were really cheap. They were very tempting, and I must admit I bought a lot of them. I think, CDs were going for like $10. And, like complete replications, right? You can never tell. But, that being said, there's another store that I go to that really imports a lot of Japanese books and things like that, and they actually import the real soundtracks. Here's one. I bought Chrono Trigger, the original soundtrack, before the game was released over here, and it cost me $59. So, yeah, that is the kind of, if it's more expensive, I don't want to say that, and it's from a reputable site, it's probably the original. But definitely do your research, as Pete's saying, definitely. What about you, Ed? What do you think of counterfeit CD? How do you know that Lunar you have is the original? I know you know it's the original, but, how can you, watch out for that?
Like you said, do your research. I found that through the forums on LunarNet, and how that was the original and whatnot. But yeah, you just have to do your research. I mean, I'm not as big as a soundtrack collector as you. I'm just kind of actually starting off, and it can be very difficult to distinguish between the bootlegs and the originals.
Yeah, it's very hard. It's very, very tough. I have a very hard time, and I've been actually collecting soundtracks kind of intensely for the last 10 years, and I still can't, like I have the Ninja Warriors CD, and that I know that's original, but it's because I got it off a Japanese Yahoo site, and we definitely did some research on it, though. We had to do that ahead of time, so. But yes, the perils of CD collecting is another thing altogether.
It's interesting. I never gotten into collecting soundtracks, but for a while I was collecting autographs. And you'd encounter the same issue with counterfeits on that. So I think you'd have to just make sure that whoever you're buying it from has a reputable reputation, good feedback, I guess. So interesting. So guys, let's talk about some games that we're playing up and kind of wrap this up. But Johnny, kind of start with you. Or what kind of games are you playing?
Oh, mine's really fast. Mine's really simple. Dragon Quest IX. I'm still doing that, and I'll be playing that all the way to PAX, and I'm going to take it to PAX and see if I can tag some people down there. That's about it. Still a very addicting game for myself. Loving it. Good. What about you, Pete? What are you playing?
I got a awesome game in the mail that I'm really enjoying right now, and I got it from PlayAsia. And, thankfully I got it from the kind people out there that click on my affiliate link for my, PlayAsia for my website or something. But over time, a couple of months it took me, I got enough credit to buy, a $50 game on there, and I decided to get Taiko no Tatsujin 3 for the DS, which just came out, not even a month ago, I think. And for those that don't know, I've done a video on the one for the Wii. It's basically a music rhythm game that did make it over to the States on the PlayStation 2, but it failed, miserably. They used, music like Britney Spears and everything, and the game I'm pretty sure it sold terribly. It's a music rhythm game where you use a taiko drum, and there's only 2 notes in the game, so it's just a red and a blue note. And it's pretty simple. You just got to hit the note on the drum, when it lines up on the screen. If you've played any music rhythm game, you can basically picture this in your head. But I played my first one. Actually, I found out about the series from Retrocalypse, which we brought up in episode 1, the guy that he just loves his DS games. And I found out about it from him. I decided to buy a copy when I went to the Too Many Games convention. They had a copy there. It was $60, and I absolutely love this game. It features a wide variety of different kinds of genres. They have video game music in there. They have J-pop. They have their own unique songs that they make especially for these games. They have just all different kinds of music. Like, as an example, in the third one that I just picked up, they have a Michael Jackson's Thriller in there, I believe, and they have different video game songs that I've never heard before, and it's just a lot of fun. It definitely gets challenging starting off. If you start off on one of the easier difficulties, it's really slow and almost boring. I'd recommend starting on medium. But when you move up to the hard difficulty, and especially the Oni mode, which is the hardest in the game, it's ridiculous. In terms of how import friendly this is, if you get the DS versions, obviously the DSs are region free, so you can play with them without a problem. You can expect to pay $40 to $60 for each of them. There's 3 versions out on the DS right now, and easy way to look out for this game if you ever see it while you're browsing the auctions. It stars that little Taiko character. He's got the red face and the blue body. I'm sure a lot of people have seen him before. It's also on the Wii. I bought the import Wii specifically for the Wii version of it. There's 2 of them out on the Wii. I have the first one, and on the Wii it actually comes with a little taiko drum and the big drumsticks, and it's a lot of fun. It's very noisy. I posted a video of that on YouTube. But it's just a really fun rhythm game. I'd actually recommend this to people that are new to the rhythm game genre because of its simplicity of only having 2 notes, and it's just really enjoyable. And if you're a veteran to music genre games, I'd still recommend this because I'll tell you, you have to dedicate weeks and months in order to get good at the hardest difficulty in this game. But yeah, I've been playing the third one on the DS, having a lot of fun with it. The song selection is not as great as the second one that I have on the DS, but I still enjoy it. And besides that, I downloaded Monday Night Combat on the Xbox Live Arcade, which I've been enjoying. And for those that don't know, it's a 6v6 third-person shooter, which plays similar to Team Fortress because it's a class-based shooter. So you have your medic to heal, you got your heavy gunner guy, you got your tank that has high defense, you have an assassin that can cloak and sneak up behind the enemy team, which is my personal favorite. You got the sniper. And anybody that's played Team Fortress, you know exactly what to expect. The one unique thing that it brings to the genre, though, is it's sort of like a fusion between turret defense and third-person shooter. And the turret defense aspect comes in where when you play online or the single player, but I just recommend don't buy this game if you're not going to play online. In the online mode, you basically have turrets that you can build because the enemy team is trying to push into your base with their AI-controlled robots and destroy basically your money bank, which is the target basically. And you can build turrets in the game, and you can upgrade those turrets to make them more powerful. And there's different kinds of turrets that you can build, just like in a tower defense game, that specialize in different aspects. So it's this unique blend of tower defense, defending your base, and a class-based third-person shooter with a really wacky personality and look to it that a lot of people compare to the Smash TV game, because if it's just like over the top, money, cash, prizes kind of theme to it, which is in Monday Night Combat as well. But I've been enjoying it. It's not perfect. There's some balancing issues and everything, and it's very limited. There's only 4 maps online, and there's only really one mode or 2 modes. There's a cooperative mode where you just defend against robots that come to attack your base, and then there's the 6 versus 6. But overall, I'm enjoying it. It's 1,200 points. I'd definitely recommend this to any Team Fortress fan, especially if you only played the console version, because the console version is dead. The PC version still thrives because the console versions never got any of the updates, unfortunately. So this is the closest thing you'll get to a Team Fortress 2 again on the consoles, and that's basically all I've been playing. And just real quickly, I've been playing Arc Rise Fantasia on the Wii, which is a pretty average RPG. It's definitely, it's fun to play if you have no other RPGs to play. It's being compared to the Tales series, but it really, the only thing it has in common with that is similar graphical approach and conversation approach where you can interact with your characters. Just a very standard turn-based RPG. The voice acting is absolutely terrible, possibly some of the worst voice acting I've ever heard in a game ever. And I'm going to be doing a review on this game anyway, because I guess I'll say it. This was my first copy of a game that I've received to review from a publisher, which was Ignition Entertainment. So I'm really excited for that. And I'll have my review up, but I will just say that it's very average right now. It has its good aspects, it has its really bad aspects, but I'm about 5 hours into it. So if you're looking for a decent RPG to hold you over on the Wii, check out Arc Rise Fantasia. And that's about all I've been playing right now. How about you, Gamester? What have you been up to?
I've been playing, probably modern games. I've been a lot of Red Dead still. Haven't beaten that, mainly because I've been gone out of town for work, but probably 15 hours into that. And then I'm also playing a lot of Uncharted 2. But to be honest with you, I've been playing a lot of, ever since the Retro Gaming Expo, Classic Gaming Expo, I've been playing a lot of retro games. And I picked a couple homebrews there. I got a game for the 2600, Atari 2600 called Halo 2600. It's a Halo game for the 2600, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, you brought this up last podcast. Have you had a chance to play it? And how does this game play exactly? What kind of game is this?
It's kind of like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that kind of style. You're a Master Chief, and you have these. You have to get these weapons and these guns, and it's like you shoot at these aliens. It's pretty funny. I'll probably do a review on it on my channel eventually soon. But it's pretty entertaining. Actually, I'm really surprised that the people who homebrewed this is not getting sued by Bungie.
That is actually a good point. Maybe I don't know. That'll be an interesting topic maybe for another show. Yeah. How some of these homebrew games come out and some of the problems that they run into with that.
So it's limited to 100 cards. You can actually go to Halo2600.com and you can play it on their website. So it's available for anyone to check out. So I encourage you guys to check it out. You can actually play it, and that's pretty cool. I've been playing. Also, I picked up at the Classic Gaming Expo. I picked up a cart for the ColecoVision. It's a multi-card. It's got all 125 ColecoVision games in one, including some games that were prototypes that were never released, including a game called Porky's. Are you guys familiar with the Porky's 80 comedies?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they did make a game of Porky's, which is really interesting, and it's very interesting to play. I might do another review on that eventually, but in one stage, I don't know if you guys remember the shower scene when they look in the peephole and they see the girls taking a shower. Well, there's a level of that, and you actually have this chick who's naked, and it's ColecoVision graphics, right? So it's not like that. But then you have what's her name who's running after you afterwards, just like the movie, which is pretty funny. So playing a lot of ColecoVision games. And the last game I've been playing for the ColecoVision game was another homebrew, and it's called The Void Century Conflict. And it just so happens that these guys who developed this and published it live right down the street from me. So I was able to meet them actually this afternoon and talk to them, and get the kind of grasp of what it is like making an old game for a classic system. And it's really interesting. Great guys. And the game plays a lot like Space Fury, for those who are familiar with Space Fury, or it's kind of like Galaga, that kind of style of game. So I've been playing a lot of retro.
Gamester, I was going to say we should dedicate a whole episode to the people that live by you, because seriously, you have so many people that are like in your area.
Everybody lives down the road.
Yeah.
Everybody lives down the road from Gamester.
I mentioned to them, and they're definitely very interested in being on their podcast. It's just a matter of when. So they're interested. Cool. But how about you, Ed? What have you been playing?
Like Johnny, I've been playing a lot of Dragon Quest IX, though I'm probably not as far as he is. Death Smiles have been thrown in there as well. The import front, I've been touching up on Ys vs. Sora no Kiseki Alternative Saga. Trying to prep myself for Xyz Ys 7 on August 17th. It was specifically created by Falcom for the PSP. It's not like even like a PC port that went to the PSP out in Japan. It's strictly for the PSP. And Xyz, I always say this. I know we talked about Working Designs earlier. Working Designs at the time put out these collector sets that were not the norm, and now they are the norm. And I think like companies like Xseed and Axis Games, and like how Atlas puts out when they publish their titles over here, or whoever they're bringing over, these collector sets. I believe firmly that Working Designs paved the way for these sets, and E7 Xseed's releasing a beautiful box set.
Oh, absolutely. I gotta agree with that. And I really suggest, if anybody's interested in getting into the E series, why not start with number 7 on the PSP? Go pre-order it on Amazon right now. Support Xseed for what they're doing. You know, it's amazing that we're getting another Ys game, right?
We're getting more than just one. I mean, they're bringing over both in Felgana and Ys Origins 1 and 2, and then next year they're going to be porting over the Legend of Heroes Sora no Kiseki trilogy.
Yeah. Now isn't that this kind of all rests on E7 doing well, though? I really think so, right? So that's why I'm kind of saying to everybody, please support Xseed. It's a great, company that's porting over things like, Working Designs used to do. And it's wonderful to do that. So let's just definitely support them so we get more of these games.
And people that don't know, Ys is spelled YS, and it's an action RPG. So, because I'm sure there's some people out there that didn't really know about it.
Or they pronounce it Wise.
Yeah. Johnny did it. Johnny did at least. Yeah, I used to pronounce it Wise until he made his video on it.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of brings us to the end of the episode. I want to say a big thanks to Ed, SplatterTrigger on YouTube. Everybody go check out SplatterTrigger's YouTube account. Some fantastic episodes on there dealing with a lot of box sets, a lot of import-only collections, like some of the E-series he's been doing lately, which has been really fantastic. So everybody go check out SplatterTrigger on YouTube. And I just want to thank everybody else. I want to thank Pete for being on the episode, and obviously Gamester for being on the episode. And unfortunately, we're all having to jet out a little earlier tonight. So in the next couple of days, we're going to answer your questions. And what we're going to do is edit them onto the end. So unfortunately, Ed won't be there for the questions, but they will be there, and probably we're going to put them up probably next, right after I'm finished talking here. So guys, thank you very much. Ed, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
It was great having you, Ed.
Yeah, definitely.
So guys, remember to check us out at allgengamers.com, and you can check out the podcast at iTunes. And make sure you subscribe up there. And also we have a forum on the website, and you can go in there and ask us questions. And we'll actually answer your questions at the end of every episode. That's what we actually do now. So just definitely check us out on iTunes and subscribe, and leave us a positive comment. Leave us a positive review. We read all of your reviews. It's something that we actually definitely go down, check out, and listen to your criticisms and positive reviews. So, guys, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. It's been fun.
Thanks, guys. Definitely. We'll be back next week. And now here to the awkward cut of your questions. Here we go.
Hey, guys. Thank you for listening to our podcast. This is Gamester81. We've got Happy Console Gamer and Pete Dorr. And as we do with every podcast, at the end of it, we like to take questions from our forum. So be sure to check out our website, All Gen Gamers, and there's a link to our forums page on there, and you can post a question, and each one of us picks one question for that. You can also follow us on Twitter, and of course you can download us and subscribe to us on iTunes. So thank you for your continued support, guys. I will start with the first question, and then I'm going to ask both Johnny and Pete on their answer to this, but this is from Bondfish, and his question is, what does your family think of your collections? Do they support you, or do they look down upon it? And for me personally, I have to say my wife is very supportive of both my collections, both of my Star Wars collection and my video game collection. Since I've gotten married, things have obviously changed as far as budgets go, which is good, and I'm always more cautious as far as how much I'm spending with my collection. But overall, she's very supportive with my collection. How about you, Johnny?
You know what? Like, I've never had a problem from anybody, to be honest with you. I think everybody knows it's a big passion for me. It's something that's important in my life. And I don't think anybody's ever said, I don't like your collecting, because I just say, okay, see you later. And so I kind of have that attitude, and I think anybody who comes into my life is quite cool about it. So I've had no problems. It's all been positive. How about you, Pete?
Yeah, so unlike you guys, I'm younger than you guys. I'm 22, so my parents, back when I was, 14 or 15, and I decided I was going to get hardcore into collecting, sometimes they'd question, like, oh, didn't you just buy a game the other day? Why are you buying another game? And it's like, as time went on, I guess it kind of just grew with them. They realized that this is what my main hobby was. I really wasn't into collecting anything else, and if this is what I wanted to spend my money on, then, well, they were accepting of it. And, now with YouTube, they've fully realized that, this is definitely my passion in life, and they definitely support it. They I mean, there's not much else to say. They're not, like, against it by any means. So, I mean, that's basically the short end of it for me as well.
Excellent. Johnny, what's your question?
Okay, so mine's from, I hope I pronounced this right, littledop.com. And he says, I know Happy Console Gamer answered this in his live show, but what do you guys think of emulation? Are you for or against it? And I think I do remember answering it, and I'm all for it. As long as you're not, emulating brand new games, like on the PS3 or 360, so developers are losing money. But on old games where nobody's making any money anymore, for some young kid to play a game from the NES days that he can't track down, I'm all for that, I don't really have a problem with that. So what about you, Gamester? What are your thoughts on emulation?
Well, yeah, I have a couple of systems like the GP2X, and, I just ordered a Pandora, which hopefully we'll get here soon. But I use my ROMs for that, and most of the emulators I use actually are the games I actually own. And the reason I bring it with me is because for convenient purposes I can bring it on the road with me. I'm not necessarily against emulation. I do use MAME a lot, just simply because arcade games are kind of hard to find, and I do use MAME more than I guess I use home consoles, so to speak. How about you, Pete?
I mean, I'm not against anybody that emulates. It's something I've tried in the past. Like, one of the first ROMs that I downloaded was for Earthbound, because at the time it was just a game that, I had no possibility of ever owning, because when I was younger, there was no way I can plop down like 100 plus for a cartridge of a game. And funny thing is, I actually didn't like Earthbound at all when I first tried it out. It wasn't until years later that I kind of just went back and looked at, some gameplay, and I was like, I think this will be the RPG for me. But I don't have any emulators and nothing on my computers right now. It's just something that isn't as fun to me as, owning the physical copy. And sometimes with ROMs, the sound could be a little bit off, not like it's true to the original, depending on what ones you're playing it on, like especially with the handheld devices. It's something I've thought about in terms of not playing on my computer. And when I did have a couple on my computer, it was like, Super Mario World, whatever, just sort of like a portable way to take them with me when I have my computer. But, I've thought about buying an emulation device like the GP2X or the Dingo or, the Gizmondo or something like that. But it's just something that it's sort of just in the back for me. It's not something I'm actively trying to get into at all. But then once, like I said, I don't have anything against people that use emulators or ROMs, because I realize that it can be very expensive to get a hold of and play certain games.
Sure.
So my question is from Super Atari Kid, and his question is, what is the rarest video game related item that you own? and I guess I'll put mine into two parts. The rarest video game that I own is Panzer Dragoon Saga. I mean, it's not terribly rare, but it definitely is the rarest game that I own, because it's, I don't go out of my way right now to buy super, super rare games because, hey, they're expensive. I'd most of the time rather take that $200 and put it towards, 20 or 30 cheaper games. But that's just a game that was totally worth the money for me. $120 I had to pay for it, which was a good price, and it's super, super fun. I'd recommend it to any RPG fan. It's definitely worth the price of admission. And second part would be in terms of, I guess, memorabilia. Probably the rarest thing I own for gaming memorabilia. It's kind of tied. Probably between my Super Sonic the Hedgehog plush and more likely the more rare one would be I have a laser-etched Sonic the Hedgehog crystal cube, which there were only 500 made in the world, and it took me a long, long time to get one of these things. And it's basically a glass cube where Sonic is etched inside with like a laser. I don't know the process that they do it, but they're like little tiny balls, and it's such a cool piece that I'm really happy to have that. And maybe to replace that later on would be they're coming out with a limited edition Supersonic statue from First Four Figures. Only 350 are being produced. I have mine fully paid off and pre-ordered, and that'll be at my doorstep next year. So, Johnny, what's the rarest gaming-related item that you own?
Jeez. I know, I remember, we were talking about this ahead of time, and I was like, geez, I wonder what I would pick, and I still don't know, but I got a bunch of rare games, but I guess it's kind of a cop-out, nostalgic answer is going to be my copy of Phantasy Star 1, just because it was the original one I played in 1987 from the guy down the road who first showed it to me, and I was blown away, and years later I ended up getting his copy. But what was amazing is that copy that I finally did get, which was his, went through about 3 people before I finally got it. And when I got it, it actually really meant something to me. So, it's funny, because I have a bunch of other copies of Phantasy Star 1. I got a bunch of different variations on it. And actually, that does lead into something that's kind of rare. I actually have a rare Mega Drive version of Phantasy Star 1 on the Sega Master System that was ported to the Mega Drive. And it's got the FM music in there. But that one goes for, I don't know, $100 to $150 now. But it's got to be my original copy of Phantasy Star. I played at my friend's place because, as I say, that's kind of priceless for me. I have all these other Phantasy Stars, but nothing means as much as that game. So that's my answer. Awesome. Gamester, what is yours? Man, you get a lot of stuff. I'm curious, man. What is going to be?
Yeah, it's hard to pick. I'll start with a console. I'll start with a game, and then I have a memorabilia item I want to mention as well. Console I have, probably the rarest console I have, is hard because there's a number, but I have a Bally Home computer, which is basically it's a Bally Astrocade, but it was mail order only in 1976 when it came out, and only very limited supply. Only ones were available like maybe a couple months, and then they took it off, and then they sold it in stores. So mine is complete box, and I was really lucky to get it. The guy who sold it to me actually didn't realize how rare it was, so I got a good deal on it. I couldn't even put a price tag as far as how much that's worth. I know.
What do you think? What do you think that'd be worth?
I know Bally Astrocades themselves, just a regular Bally Astrocade, will sell anywhere from $200 to $400 loose.
Yeah.
So I would think this probably goes for $1,000, or plus, probably. The condition it's in, mint and stuff, I'd probably think over $1,000.
Yeah.
As far as my game goes, there's several rare, like Super Noah's Ark 3D for the Super Nintendo's pretty rare, but probably the one that takes I can think of top of the head is it's a PCFX game. It's called Zenki, Zenki.
Oh yeah, I know it.
Yeah, and it's a rare game. It sells for anywhere from $300+ on eBay. I have that copy of that. So pretty interesting fighting game. And then memorabilia, I have, and I'm really excited to have this because this is actually I got this when I was a kid. I held on to it. I went to the premiere of The Wizard back in early 1990s, and The Wizard is a Fred Savage movie, which really basically it's a movie advertisement for Super Mario Bros. 3. So essentially what it is. But they were handing out these pocket powers, these little mini magazines that they're passing out to people opening night, and I kept it. And I didn't even know how much it's worth, but I know I was on eBay. I can't even find them on eBay. So
wow. Yeah, I remember you were talking to me and Rob, man, about that. We were like, ooh, that's damn cool.
Yeah.
I think Rob has something like that too. He's got like a brochure from the Wizards. Yeah.
I did see it actually. The Classic Gaming Expo, they had it, and they were selling it for $250.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's awesome, man. That's really cool.
Yeah, and the cool thing is I got it for free, so I held on to it. And I know my brother's copies. My brother's with me, and I have 2 more copies laying around somewhere in my parents' house. I got to find it in the garage, but I do have 2 more copies laying around. So.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it. Is that all the 3 questions that we have?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
For this episode. Yeah. So if you guys want to send us your questions in and have us read them and answer them on the show, just remember you can go to allgengamers.com. There's a link to our forums, and then in the forum, you'll find we have a topic right on the top that's pinned. You can ask us a question, and we will possibly answer it on one of our upcoming episodes. And just a reminder, if we don't get around to answering one of your questions, it does not mean that we have totally, passed it over. We may go back and answer it on a future episode as well. So thank you guys, Gamester and Johnny. We will both be back here once again next week for another episode of All Gen Gamers. See you again.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
Alright, hey guys, it's Pete here, and as usual, I'm going to leave you guys off with a little tidbit here that I always like to throw in at the end of editing the episode. We really hope you enjoyed episode 3. We know it was a lot shorter than episode 2. The problem with that was our guest host, SplatterTrigger, Ed, was only able to join us during one day out of the week, and that day was a day where Gamester and Johnny had to be, they were busy this night, so we kind of had to basically end the show after an hour, which is plenty of time to cover what we covered. There was more that we wanted to talk to Ed about, specifically, what he's into besides working designs. He has a great story behind his collection and how it basically went from being in his garage and how he rediscovered his love for gaming and how he basically pieced back together his collection into his own great little game room he's got going on now. But maybe in a future episode, months from now, we might have Ed back on to talk again. But we definitely had fun with this episode as well. I was the only host to have the new microphone, the Snowball microphone, and it definitely helps a little bit. The problem is when I go back to edit the shows, my mic was always so much louder than everybody else's, so this mic has helped me to adjust my volume better, so that editing an episode does not take me as long, so I can kind of get my microphone on the same level as everybody else. Now, for episode 4, which we actually have recorded already, we actually just got done recording it, and I'm not going to tell you guys who our guest hosts are for episode 4, but it's definitely another excellent show. The good news is that Johnny, myself, and Gamester, all 3 of us will have our Snowball microphones in that episode, and hopefully it sounds a lot better as well. The problem with Skype is it still doesn't capture the true audio quality of these microphones. Skype still does kind of screw up our audio quality, but it'll definitely help a lot. And you guys can look for episode 4 next Wednesday, and that's going to be another great episode. It's a little bit longer once again. It's around 2 hours, I believe, but that's because we do have 2 guest hosts on, and there's a reason for that. So stay tuned for that as well. Also, I just want to thank everybody that's left us a review on iTunes. We're up to quite a few reviews now, and it's definitely helping us out on there. We read every one of them. So if you haven't already, head on over to iTunes and go to our All Gen Gamers page. You can leave us a review there. Also, I believe we should be on the Zune Marketplace. I searched for us on there, and we did come up. So we are on the Zune Marketplace now as well, for those of you that have Zunes. Also, one thing that I wanted to address right now that we've been getting a lot of questions and concerns about are where we're going to go in the future episodes in terms of who our guests are going to be. Right now, we do have, each of us have a lot of people in mind that we'd love to have on the show. And a lot of people are wondering if, what does it take to be a host on the show? Do you have to have a channel? Do you have to be popular? And by no means, no, you don't have to have a YouTube channel. You don't have to have a popular channel. It's just that right now, the 3 of us have so many people that we just can't wait to get on the show already that, we really just want to get them on the show now because we really are excited to have them on and talk about games. So in future episodes, you can expect to have people on that don't have a YouTube channel, or they might just be, a member of our forums, and we find that they're very, they talk a lot on there about games, and we might ask them to be on the show. Or we may ask, one of our regular listeners to be on the show that's very supportive of our channels or something. So it's not going to always be limited to having to have a YouTube channel in order to be a host on the show. Definitely not. I don't want to give that impression out to you guys. So yeah, that's basically it. That's all I wanted to talk about for the end of this episode. Just hope you guys enjoy, and see you again next week.